Hello everyone, I'm Sri Banerjee, a student at Criminal Justice Program at Walden University. And in this segment, I'm going to be going over the Special Management Unit and ethics. First of all, this Special Management Unit is kind of a mouthful. However, what this means is that basically in isolation or in solitary confinement, the individuals that are in solitary confinement, the ethical considerations of that. And what I'll be going over in this segment is also the considerations that people should make or on prisoners, the prison systems, where there's humane conditions. So the main thing is we have an archaic system that is coming down from the 1800s. And the idea was to completely deprive people of basic necessities. Well, we're no longer living in those centuries. We're actually much more reformed, and based on this, based upon our cultural values and beliefs, this is something that is unacceptable and inhumane. This is to create, and the important portion is to create an environment that fosters the improvement of health among vulnerable populations. Look, just because they're behind bars or have committed a crime, do not make them any less of a human than another person that didn't. It is our job to treat prisoners in a humane manner. So the idea is that, when you're listening to me talk about the interventions, the idea is to listen how the interventions addressed various components and various conditions. And my task, this is a task that was given to me. I'm a correctional administrator. I'm an officer, and I've been in my job for 20 years. So this is basically, they say that this is going to be difficult because this federal prison actually houses the worst behaved federal inmate. The SMU, or the Special Management Unit, that's also solitary confinement, as I was telling you earlier, or complete isolation. Basically, all 1,100 prisoners have been placed at the SMU at some point or another for serious infractions offenses while at other prisons. The recidivism rate for the SMU inmates is twice as high when compared to all other federal prison inmates. Prison reform to improve behavior upon and eventually reduce recidivism. So let's look at intervention number one. Intervention one came into widespread use in the 19th century, like I was telling you, as a form of punishment for convicted persons. This sort of solitary confinement is a form of correctional housing, and get this, 23 hours in this small room, devoid of light many times. This is typically characterized as like a cage. The only room that you have in there is the size of a parking lot. So of course the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, had allowed for or from what they saw, 1 hour was allowed for exercise, and this was even in a cage. So there was social deprivation, adverse health outcomes, and deprivation of light. There was no bed, sink, or toilet, and basically they were devoid of everything. Now, the interventions that this research talked about, and this is Ahal et al. 2017, this showed that if you limit solitary confinement to only those cases where the inmate exhibits violence, then that is more effective than just basically allowing other inmates to go that don't have as severe infractions. Regularly reviewing and releasing all isolated prisoners for return to general population periodically and more frequently. If you basically throw somebody in solitary confinement and don't repeatedly evaluate, then the conditions honestly get worse for the inmate, because this sort of behavior kind of begets more. So also another intervention that the authors were talking about is that if you want to achieve anything legitimate and immediate correctional goals, you have to prohibit its usage in certain populations, and just giving them the briefest term of isolation that you can. That's the intervention. Also, another intervention called for an immediate return of those showing mental and physical health risk factors, and also assisting individuals who are transitioning out of isolation. Very importantly, partnering with medical, public health, and criminal justice experts to develop evidence-based alternatives to solitary confinement for nearly all prisoners. So another one is eliminate all solitary confinement not related to violent misconduct. And I think this is a repeated theme that you're seeing in a lot of this author's work. They want to limit administrative hold, non-violent behavioral infractions, and those under protective custody. And this can be addressed through means that do not impose an undue increase. Now that's important. Increased mental and physical health. So this is some of the slides about applications and interventions that worked. Limited terms of isolation, as I mentioned. What are the vulnerable populations? I know I talked about them. And there's actually 5 that are considered vulnerable. Juveniles, right? The mentally ill, cognitively impaired, pregnant women, and elderly or medically infirm prisoners. So just to summarize, the re-entry coordinator and external prisoner advocate or representative is recommended. Require regular review. We went over that. The review process should include a clear course of action to return prisoners to general population, following the shortest possible time. The more you have made clear what are the goals and objectives in a positive manner, the improved outcomes people have. Again, accessing to exercise, socialization, access to care, these are all important when putting people into solitary confinement and then bringing them out. Kind of a specialized step-down transitional service to prisoners preparing to transfer. And then no prisoner should be released directly back into free society from solitary confinement. That is something that interventions that are produced should be taking these into consideration. So the next research goes into something called an intervention called Project Behavioral Reinforcement to Increase Treatment Engagement, BRIGHT. And that is a 4-year study that tested the impact of a positive behavioral reinforcement intervention on male and female inmates engaging in 12-week intensive outpatient prison-based drug treatment programs. In other words, this was a drug treatment program that was in a 12-week program that was using positive reinforcement. Inmates enrolled in these programs received systematic positive feedback. And of course, they had to participate in structured and supervised programs and activities, and they were incentivized because of that. So this is still going on, burden et al. The treatment program and basically from the treatment program and engaging in behaviors that were consistent with and promoted recovery and a healthy pro-social lifestyle. Compassion and empathy, those are basic pro-social lifestyles. Project Bright sought to increase inmate engagement in treatment programs, thereby improving psychosocial functioning. And then short outcome treatment and post-release outcome, distal outcomes, increased participation in aftercare, decreased drug use, decreased rearrests, and returns to prison. So this was kind of a interesting approach, using a technique where, again, positive reinforcement is there. And when you have interventions that promote wellness and promote positive reinforcement, then that actually leads to improved psychosocial functioning. So the treatments and interventions, not only that have short-term outcomes, but also have post-release outcomes, actually fare better than those that didn't have these interventions. So some more, just to kind of wrap things up, inmates receive positive reinforcement. Pro-social behaviors provides an overview of the development and implementation of a positive behavioral reinforcement intervention. Active involvement by all staff and inmates enrolled in the treatment programs. Development of the intervention along with the successful branding of the intervention. And finally, looking at some of them, another intervention that looked at motivational incentive points. Basically what that was, if you participated and attended in regular group sessions, then that would lead to rewarding behavior, and there would be weekly self-evaluation. So looking at some of the evidence for the third intervention and the effectiveness. Basically, because of the intervention, an average of 17% did better. That is a 2% increase than other programs that did not adhere to the principles. So a critical aspect of reducing institutional disorder, therefore, involves ensuring that administrators implement treatment programs in accordance with principles. One of the more well-supported types of treatment in prison involves inmate reentry services, which typically deliver late in the process. So just summarizing this some more and applying, the success of a preventive strategy hinges on an agency's ability to identify high-risk inmates upon admission. So this is really important in this study, because most of them give you interventions. However, there is no way to identify those at highest risk. And an intervention that takes a risk profile, as you saw, was more successful than those that were not, implying that understanding the level of risk for violent behavior that would end up in solitary confinement is very important to understand. And they go, in the research, they go over some of the inventories and articles that correctional authorities use to identify the need for early placement in prison programming. So basically, this is more prevention. If you see that somebody's at risk, then you can support them with interventions. So one of this is correctional offender management profile for alternative sanctions, level of service inventory, Ohio risk assessment system, and static risk and offender needs guide. Those are the ones. And the goal is to reduce the use of restrictive housing. Authorities need a tool that can effectively predict placement and identify at-risk prisoners. So just to conclude some of this, basically what is important is to understand that if you want success within your intervention, then you have to not only apply positive reinforcement, you also have to consider some of the short-term and long-term goals. And trying to achieve a more amenable atmosphere is not only important, but also to assess for the risk of violent behavior and behavior that leads to solitary confinement, allows for prevention to take place within the prison system. So looking at the prison system, this is still a solitary confinement in a traditional manner is still in widespread use in the United States and Canada. Again, preventive strategies on the front end are most important in identifying high-risk inmates. And to reduce any of these restrictions, it is important to provide quality programming, even when they're in the prison system and out of solitary confinement. I hope this has made some sense. Here are my references. Thank you for listening.